Oh boy, it's back in the news again. Final Fantasy 16. Is it happening? I know I just recently did a video and I don't know, man. I feel weird doing another one, especially when I don't even really feel the need for a Final Fantasy 16. Like, I know some people definitely do have like a real hankering for it. The fact that we haven't seen original Final Fantasy characters in such a long time. And outside of 14, and the 7 remake is obviously a remake, and like 15 we saw Noctis like 2013. So we have not seen like an original Final Fantasy concept that's purely original for quite a substantial time, like over a decade, man. So I could definitely see why there's loads of people who are hankering for FF16. Me, I'm not so bothered, but now we've got this hitting the news. So this is on top of the rumor that we had from someone who has demonstrated insider information before. They said it should have been here at June. Of course, Square Enix also promised us several big game announcements before August. It's now 1st of September, Square. Yes, I actually had to check. Jeez, it is the 1st today. Where were those announcements? I mean, unless, when they said several major game announcements, they actually meant things like Crystal Chronicles and, I don't know, Outriders, whenever that showed. But they definitely weren't major, so unless the announcements are still to come, and for whatever reason, they didn't show it in August. But this Final Fantasy 16 rumor is about Twitter accounts being registered, and they do follow the standard Twitter naming scheme that's happened for previous Final Fantasies. It's really not the most airtight of rumors or entirely believable, because anyone, of course, can make a freaking account. The only thing that adds a little bit of weirdness to this is the recovery address does follow the character and naming scheme of traditional Square Enix email addresses. I mean, that's literally the characters for squareenix.com. So the options are that this could be legit, or it was just someone making the FF16 accounts and making the email address to purposely generate this news of it coming. But regardless, I don't want to just cover that one singular rumor, take that as you will. I want to talk more about Final Fantasy 16 in terms of the concept. I've got to say, a real sort of vision and concept of what I think I'd like the game to be has really started to emerge, and it's a few things that's happened. A few of the design choices and like the hints that they've left in interviews about what 16 could be about that I kind of want to talk about today and see what your guys' vision of FF16 is. So I want to begin this journey back to this trailer here. I mean, you guys, well, the title's there, Agni's Philosophy. This was sort of where Luminous started. It was one of the first tech demos of it. We saw this really dank character with like these red feathers. You just skip through some like significant bits here. I mean, you can watch the trailers again. This is just a reminder. And like, yeah, you had this cult and they're dressed in like these red robes, and you've got this chick doing like high magic. This was Agni's Philosophy, man. We continue it on a little bit, and sort of one of the first monsters we see is like this sort of feral beastie type creature. Like this attacks her. And on top of what we saw as like black magic, we then see like this curative spell. We skip past it, or like she took like a curative potion. So anyway, I was just getting a real like red mage vibe. There we go, he's attacking. Nommy nom nom. Tasty snack of a female protagonist Agni could have been. Especially for fans, I don't know, I always liked the concept of this. But we continue on a bit, and the other main theme was dragons. So Agni's Philosophy really gave me this first kind of red mage, female protagonist, dragon, high fantasy, high magic kind of vibe. And I was hoping, honestly, that Project Athia was going to be Agni. And I've got to say, from watching Athia again, we'll watch it. Now, the aesthetic really isn't much different. Other than this, which is interesting, this character obviously has modern day sneakers. And it says she's not from her world, so it seems like, and then there we go, we have another sort of feral beastie vibe. Now this character, very quickly, there we go, that's kind of the only front shot we get of her. We do see a character model from behind later in this trailer, but some people were saying that they got like a Crow Altius vibe, Kingsglaive. Just, all of this video is all speculation. It's all hypothetical. I actually believe less than 1% chance that something like Project Athia could be a secret Final Fantasy. I don't think it's likely, but it's not impossible because, I mean, we have had Final Fantasies come out and shown to us while they've been under code names. Sometimes they've even cynically decided to turn something that was going to be an original IP into a Final Fantasy just because Final Fantasy equals money! They know it. They've done that before. I think they did it with Spirits Within, or certainly even that started, it's when we first saw it, its codename under Project Gaia. 15 had code names, so did 13, usually associated with the engine, but still unhitherto, it couldn't be entirely possible that Project Athia, which of course is not named yet, is actually Final Fantasy 16. And that this was perhaps, because honestly, a lot of people were mostly anticipating Project Athia to be one of the big announcements before August. I mean, it seemed the most logical that we would get more information on that from that really brief 1:19 trailer. But let's keep playing it. So Crow Altius has come to some people's mind. Agni was kind of in a lot of people's mind as well. So like a female protagonist is sort of emerging. Now this is what I love. This is what I love and this is what I need. So I really love this sort of nomadic style jungle sort of terrain. And when I've been thinking about future Final Fantasies, one thing that really came up in my mind that I remembered was when the president of Square Enix said that just because Final Fantasy 15 was an action-based open world game doesn't mean Final Fantasy 16 would. So that's one thing that he said. Then when I go to say Yoshi P or a few other directors, I think even Nomura, Katase, I mean, they've all made sporadic hints in interviews of what they personally would like Final Fantasy 16 to be. And one thing I've seen emerge a lot is the idea of going back to a medieval style aesthetic, one that is kind of high magic, but not tech. No tech. No tech. No magitech. No, we've had that quite a lot. 15 had its technologically advanced aspects. 13 obviously massively. I mean, the summons turned into freaking cars, people. The whole trilogy was high tech, and so a lot of people have thought it'd be refreshing to move back to the medieval style. And I've got to say, I agree. But the other thing I really love about these landscapes is I also get a near automata vibe. When you've got these kind of jungly terrains with that near, that mossy green, vibrant kind of aesthetic. I much like that than I think what the dull and drabness of Dusky was. Final Fantasy 15. I say Dusky now because look at it, man. This is Luminous Engine. This is what 15 was made on, and one of its iconic shots of the engine was the arches in Dusky. I mean, there was literally a whole story in 15 about why those arches were so abnormal. Rock structures don't grow like that, and they were actually crafted by Titan. Yeah, literally, Titan himself made them. So when they now show this significant shot with Dusky there, I'm like, oh boy, oh buddy, what's happening? Is this like a prequel to 15? I mean, this is just where my mind's going. I don't actually believe it, and to a lot of degrees, I wouldn't want it, but I'll cover that in a minute. So not only does the female protagonist give me a Crow Altius vibe, like from behind, the sort of lone ranging witch moving from this high fantasy world, using her magic, and she's specifically a red mage, curative and destructive magic. Not only did I get that vibe from Agni, but Crow Altius was literally that character. Here we go. I mean, spoilers for Kingsglaive movie. This was actually in the trailers of it, so it's not actually a big spoiler. But yeah, when Crow first arrived, you see she's got the red choker, and there she is using magic, way more powerful than any of the other Kingsglaive. And what I always go back to is Crow was most likely, if you see my theory videos, a Auburn-Bry. So basically Dave Auburn from Final Fantasy 15, remember the character Dave, and he had Yzma, and they had a sister in the family who was deemed as a witch, and she was actually literally sent into hiding out in the woods. She lived as a hermit witch in the mountains, because in the world of Final Fantasy 15, magic was kind of reserved to families. It wasn't commonly used. And you had the Kalums who were black, you had the Florets who were the white mages, and then you had Dave's line, which were these kind of monster and demon hunters in the story. They're the ones who had the keys to the vault, even in the old artwork. The creatures with the wings, sort of in the cosmology. Yeah, these two were the Red Mage family. And now when we have Crow Altius, who was, in this game, super magically gifted, not only did she have a red choker, but she was also an orphan. She was actually pushed out of her village for being a witch. I shit you not. And then when you just follow what happened in the Kingsglaive movie, one of the first things Arden does is he gets Drautus to go and execute Crow. Like one of the first things. Now, why would Arden set that up unless Crow was someone important, someone who needed taking out? And I can only think a gifted young woman in a red mage family with super high powers at killing demons and beasts would be a threat to Arden. So that always stuck in my mind that there was more there, so much more there than they ever explored. And Crow was such a great character. Now when I see this character kind of give me this sense of being somewhere between Crow and Agni, that there should be like this red mage female going through this wilderness world. Oh my god, this dragon. This is even more significant because if those columns are literally Dusky, if this is set in the same world as 15, which I'm just going to clear now, I don't actually want it. I don't actually want it. I actually feel no compelled reason why. For one, I think it's doubtful that Project Athia is actually a secret Final Fantasy just not titled, but two, I didn't find the world of FF15 that compelling. Like in terms of world lore and its gods and its story, like there were some interesting concepts there, definitely. But Square was so limited in scope, in how they actually explored and made those clear to the audience, that it all just kind of fell flat, in my opinion. Now, would they perhaps use the Luminous engine to do like a story set in the world of 15, but so far before that, like there's no references to Final Fantasy or Noctis or any of that story? Well, if that was the case, then it would be Solheim. Solheim was the civilization that came thousands of years before FF15 in the modern era, and we saw like these like random sporadic ruins of Solheim, and those ruins were very medieval in style. Like this was what some of the structures looked like. Now all brickwork, all castly, some really tall structures, one that was similar to like the Tower of Babylon. You can see it kind of floating in the back. Again, not to say these are the ramblings of a madman, but I just want to see how far you guys like the concept. Now what was really interesting about Solheim is specifically the temples were guarded by dragons. You had Quetzalcoatl defending one area, and then the other where they had like this sort of machinery. It was like a secret dungeon, and it was to mimic what the Empire Niflheim were using now to create the MTs. Solheim had a similar one, and that there was this whole theme of reincarnating the dead, of resurrection, of trying to find eternal life. And again, that machine was being defended by a dragon. You know, and dragons come hand in hand with medieval. Do you know what I mean? Like the two are almost inseparable. So I wanted to actually show the dragon in its full shot. Look at this. Wow. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Maybe, man. All of this stuff just makes me hype for the idea of this being Final Fantasy 16. Now, of course, some people say, well, Pez, if you like the look of this game, if you like the concept of this game, just enjoy it as Project Athia. Enjoy it. And to that I say, absolutely yes. Like, it doesn't need just to be titled Final Fantasy 16 for the game to be good and interesting and compelling. You know, it's pretty superficial and shallow just be like, oh, if they call it Final Fantasy, I'm in. But of course, despite that, there is a reality on it, and Square Enix have noticed this before, that if you call something Final Fantasy, then you've stuck that bad boy up on a whole new plane of existence, a whole new pedestal. People will have preconceived notions and connotations of what it should be, of what a Final Fantasy is, and the kind of vibe that it is realistically allowed to send out to its audience. You know, something like Spirits Within, for example, getting named Final Fantasy. Like, so many people are like, oh, as just like a separate individual sci-fi movie, not bad. Like, it's not great, but wouldn't have been as critical. But because you called it a Final Fantasy, you especially done goofed. So I get all of that aspect. All I'm expressing in this video is that through watching these little snippets of stuff, all that are kind of connected to each other in one way or another. Like FF15 is obviously to the Luminous engine, Luminous is to Agnes, and this is the byproduct of all of these creative kind of blocks and pillars that have slowly been getting stacked, that this is why this game is what it is now. And so I've seen some people say like, oh, this doesn't look like a Final Fantasy to me. Like, no. Regardless of it, if it is, I disagree, man. I think this could easily be what another Final Fantasy looked like. I mean, they've changed so much creatively between every single title. Like, what even is Final Fantasy anymore? What even are the rules of where they could go creatively? And the last point I'd mention is this sort of traversal. This here, I am so up for this in a Final Fantasy. I don't know if anyone else is, but I personally don't want the next Final Fantasy to be open world. In fact, I've got a little list here, and I'd like you guys to make a similar list in the comment section below. I want a female protagonist. I want high magic. And this was also part of the FF16 rumor, that it was gonna be combining all of these like crazy like high magic spells and doing like a really expansive, intricate kind of combat system of all of these, destructive and curative magics. And that's why I'm very interested in red mages. Red mages occupy a very intriguing space that I don't think Final Fantasy has fully utilized. I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong in the conversation, we've really had like a profoundly red mage character being one of our MCs in the game. And I just think it'd be really cool. Then I said the wilderness, forest, near kind of landscapes with medieval structures. And this is what I mean. I called it energetic linear, spotted wide linear. So I like linear in FF13. I know some people said it was corridor simulator, it was boring, but I love it. And I just think the kind of Final Fantasies I love that have constant story throughout, I just always feel like it works better in a linear environment. Now, not to say you have to make it corridorish again. 13.2 showed you can open those corridors out. You can still have wide linear areas to explore so you don't feel so suffocated in. And FF13 did have wide open areas. The problem is it is where they positioned them. They weren't frequent enough. I think this could just be a really cool, engaging way to travel through linear environments in a super hype, adrenaline rushing, engaging kind of way. And I can see this being the theme of the PS5 now. What with the loading times, because we got that on literally the demo. Like the demo, first official PS5 gameplay. You guys probably saw this. Again, we had this, of course, Ratchet and Clank are doing the similar things, because the load times just mean you can pass through environments in crazy high action ways. I even feel like Final Fantasy 15 was starting to try to do that, what with the Assassin's Creed DLC. I hated it, didn't like the Assassin's Creed, but remember, you were like running through. Less than they tried to make it like high action and a lot going on, and airships crashing and shit. So to see them now using this, because the PS5 technologically allows it in a way that we've never seen it before. Now we've seen they've definitely got in Project Athia. I mean, even something like this, it's a Wukong game. Yeah, man. Yeah, I am so up for this. I love this. It gets pretty fast paced in it, just like some flips and rolls. And just bear in mind, this game has got people so hyped, and this is a 30-man built indie game. Bro. But yeah, you guys get it. Sort of passing through these terrains in interesting, cool ways. And again, even this Wukong, it's got that jungle, mossy, near vibe that I just like. My favorite landscape is literally woodlands and forests, so that might just be something in my subconscious that I like. This is my ideal look of paradise. The kind of place I'd love to go hiking through. It's why I love the temples in Japan. It's why sections of Peru near the jungle. I just love this. So there we go. That's all I really had to articulate. Is Final Fantasy 16's got another rumor. Twitter accounts have been registered. Could be as BS as the other rumor, but there's definitely dialogue happening on it. It's definitely coming up quite a lot, and surrounding the mystery of exactly what Athia is, with Square saying they've got big announcements, which is where everything is right now. I still can't imagine FF16 is actually going to come, but if it is, all of this I've got to say is touching creatively on what I can really imagine. I think we're ready for even another female protagonist. We had Noct last, we've got Cloud now in the remake. I don't know who agrees with that. Next Final Fantasy hero to be a female protagonist. I'm all in. Red mage, cults. Oh yeah, the last point I made on here was cults and dragons. Yeah, that'd be dope, man. That'd be dope. That right there is my list for 16, and I want it to happen. But But there we go. Regardless of what Project Athia is, I'm definitely going to be playing it because, of course, 15 had its Angus torn out for this engine to be made. So I want to see what all the fruits of that labour were for and see what this new Square Enix game is about. But I've always loved the Agni concept, the crow stuff, and the notion that, I don't know, maybe like the Aubenbrees, the Red Mage family were one of the first settlers. They came from a different world, settled on this planet, and there they are, like taming the wilderness. Like the first woman Aubenbree taming the wild and the beasts and the creatures that live within, and then eventually the demons of 15. I don't know. I'm out. I've got myself lost in the whirlwind of concepts. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. Till the next video. Kubo!